everybody. I don't. Is there like a rule that everyone has to sit on this side of the room today? Is this like a contest that's happening? Yeah, it's a little jarring. Like you don't you can spread out. That's okay. You're all squeezing in. I'm the Dean, Jocelyn Benson. Great to see all of you. This is really a tremendous blockbuster group that we have. 5 very distinguished alums, all doing various things in the healthcare industry. And so I'm glad you've been able to join us. I think this is our last Alumni Speaker Series event of the semester. As you know, this started 2 years ago, where we've been bringing in monthly some distinguished alums. This is our first panel on healthcare and health law and health policy, but of course, as many of you know, this subject is a growing and emerging area in the law, and everyone here with us today doing very fascinating things, very diverse in different things. And so I really encourage you, as I always do, to ask questions, to get to know our distinguished panelists. This is an opportunity for you to connect with these distinguished alums. And so I hope afterwards, in addition to asking questions, that you will stay and talk with some of our alums who are here and use this as an opportunity to network, ask your questions, and build those relationships that are so important for you all as you launch your career and hope to follow in many of their footsteps. So with that, Associate Dean Gable is here. As you know, he's also an expert in health law, so he's the perfect person to moderate our panel and formally introduce everyone else here. So I will turn it over to Dean Gable.
Okay. Thanks for being here. I'd like to welcome you all to this great event. We have a really outstanding panel, and I'm going to spend as little time speaking as possible so you can hear from them. I just want to take just a moment to briefly introduce who we have here on the panel today. And it's amazing because we have people who are graduates of our law school who are doing multiple different types of things in health law, and so in some cases healthcare practice with a background in law. And as you'll hear from them today, there are many different pathways and routes that you can take if you're interested in health law and health policy. So first, over on the right, we have Dr. Ernest Kyoto, who is a graduate from Wayne State with a law degree in 1986. He also has a medical degree, and he's working on his 6th master's degree. He's a physician, lawyer, and certified industrial hygienist and biomedical engineer. He also teaches toxic tort law as an adjunct professor at Loyola University Chicago and the John Marshall Law School in Chicago. He's board certified in medical specialties of internal medicine, occupational medicine, and public health and general preventive medicine. Next here on the panel is Dr. Fernando Diaz, class of 95, law degree, medical degree, and doctorate in neurophysiology and neurosurgery. He is the chief of neurosurgery at Beaumont Hospital and chief of Beaumont Health System's Neuroscience Center of Excellence. Next we have Bradley Lerner, class of 95, who creates strategies to implement the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act of 2008 and the Affordable Care Act for Beacon Health Options. And works, I believe, in the General Counsel's office there?
Yep.
Yes. Next over here on my left, we have Donna A, class of 84, who is senior counsel in Dykema's healthcare practice group. She served as senior vice president, assistant general counsel, and assistant secretary for the Detroit Medical Center, and as senior counsel for the Henry Ford Health System. So she has a lot of great experience in a number of different settings. And last but certainly not least, over on the far left here, my far left, your far right, I guess, David Rogers, class of 82, who is founding shareholder of Rogers & Associates PC. His practice focuses on representing and advising healthcare providers and professionals. And I'll also add that David is going to be teaching with us next semester as an adjunct professor teaching the Healthcare Organizations and Finance course, which some of you may be interested in. So, what I'd like to do, we have such an impressive group up here, I'd like to start off with each one of them spending 3 to 5 minutes talking a little bit about their backgrounds, introducing themselves, talking about the main aspects of their work, and then we'll take it from there with some follow-up questions and some discussion from all of you. So let's start with Dr. Chiodo.
Well, I have an unusual background. I'm a physician and an attorney and a biomedical engineer and a toxicologist and an epidemiologist. Formal credentials and all this stuff, not self-proclaimed. So although I still practice some general medicine and do some occupational medicine and do practice law, every once in a while I'll try toxic tort cases and will represent a physician with a licensure or staff credential problem. Most of what I do is serve as a forensic expert in everything from figuring out the forces in a car crash, usually low-speed collisions. But we have homes and offices here, downtown Chicago, and also in West Palm Beach, Florida. So I'd say a Chicago Transit Authority bus runs into a car in Chicago. I'm the go-to guy for the CTA to figure out what were the forces in the collision, and was somebody hurt from the collision, or who's supposed to determine whether or not a building is contaminated with mold, certified industrial hygienist. I get involved in mold cases as an expert witness. Is the building contaminated? Does somebody get sick from it? I had one case where I had to figure out whether or not an anesthesiologist murdered his wife with carbon monoxide. So most of what I do is forensic medicine and engineering. And the best way to describe that is that I am a professional punching bag. You guys, some of you guys down the line will be able to have the joy of just kind of getting in there and just beating me up a little bit. But I'm okay. I never cry. I never get some tears in my eyes, but I never break out in frank crying spells.
Okay, Dr. Diaz.
It's a pleasure to be here today with you. 24 years ago, when I started my education at Wayne Law, I wasn't really sure why I was doing it. I was the chairman of neurosurgery at Wayne State University School of Medicine. I had a full practice of surgery at the time, which involved 60-hour weeks doing surgery, and yet I wanted to learn law. My sister was then the one of the Supreme Court justices in Mexico, and I have 5 other attorneys in my family that constantly were talking to me about different things, so the interest came from that. I had the pleasure of interacting with a lot of your senior brethren in an adversary situation, testifying and being deposed and doing all kinds of wonderful things that initially were intimidating to me. When I went to law school, I realized that attorneys, like doctors, put their pants on one leg at a time. And the intimidation factor basically disappeared. My practice is limited to medicine. I use my law background as a phenomenal source of information. It taught me to negotiate very good things. Donna may not remember it, but we've worked together at the medical center. I was the chief medical officer for the DMC for 4 years. And my law degree helped me negotiate a lot of very good contracts with physicians, a lot of very good contracts with provider services, with insurance companies, and eventually with the new appointed president of the medical center after we had an adversary relationship, i.e. lawsuit. So the background has been very good for me. I have made use of my interest in health law. That was really my track from the very beginning. Even though we didn't have a health track then, I kind of created my own and pieced the courses that I thought would be helpful. Con law was one of those. I was telling the guys here earlier that con law to me was one of the most fascinating areas of learning in the law school. I had one teacher who was a total left, con 1, one teacher that was a total right, con 2. And that really was phenomenal, especially when they had arguments and planned discussions that gave the opposite views. To me, this education is second to none. It has given me the opportunity to grow, to develop new things, and to add to my collection of degrees. Unfortunately, like Ernie, I have more degrees than a thermometer.
So I have the unfortunate position of going after these two gentlemen, where I was probably more akin to you guys and was not going to have 4,000 degrees. Very impressive. Also, Dr. Diaz, I remember we graduated together, and we had the benefit of being in law school during the OJ trial. So it's now kind of coming full circle. So can you imagine going to law school during that and the types of questions and criminal procedure? So Brad Lerner, and I have had every kind of law job. So that's another thing that's interesting, and that wasn't by purpose. I think your career is always serendipity and circuitous, but I've worked at the Michigan Court of Appeals, worked for a law firm, I worked for a nonprofit, and I worked for the federal government in DC, and now I'm in-house. So if anybody has questions, I've covered the entire gamut. And right now, I'm working for a managed care company, so for basic purposes, the payer or the insurer side. But I have the fortune of working at a time where our company only focuses on mental health and substance use disorder benefits. And we're sort of having a time right now in this country where this issue is becoming increasingly important. And a couple factors played into that. The Affordable Care Act provided that mental health and substance use disorder benefits are essential health benefits and must be covered on the exchange. And then we have the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act, which went into effect but just recently became implemented, which says that your mental health benefits and substance use benefits have to be on par with your medical surgical benefits. So right now, that along with some legislation that's occurring at the federal level that some people are trying to get through, we're seeing a lot of changes in this area, and it's really exciting to be a lawyer at this time, both on the mental health side, but also for the Affordable Care Act. I don't know how much it's discussed in law school here, but this is a transformative law. It's a lawyer's law. I mean, this is pages and pages, so I encourage people when they're thinking about what do I want to be when I get out of here. I think that this is, everybody's looking to the lawyers in my company for every new preventative medicine guidelines, out-of-network benefits, caps, high deductible, Cadillac tax. The lawyer has a role in the managed care company. In the world, we're looked to as the person to read it, and this isn't an area of jurisprudence that has what a stare decisis. I mean, you're the lawyer, you're the first person to read it, whether you've been a partner for 40 years studying health law or you're reading it for the first time. We're all at the same place trying to figure it out. So it's a great area also to gain some expertise at a young age in terms of your career. I think that the dean had a good point about networking. When I was here at Wayne, I grew up in Detroit, grew up in the suburbs, and I went to University of Michigan. I never thought I would leave. When I went to DC, I realized it was sort of the Hollywood for lawyers. Like everybody was a lawyer there, and there were so many opportunities. So if you don't want to just do transactional or litigation, I was very interested in public policy. I didn't even know that, but I wound up working for a federal agency there doing analysis, and that is of new laws and helped doing rulemakings, and that has really turned into a great career for me and really interesting. And I encourage folks to think about doing internships and going there, because that has so many tremendous opportunities for lawyers. I have a bunch of cards here too, and we'll have a dialogue, but we do have legal interns in the summer, and I'm glad to talk to people. And, our offices in Norfolk and Boston, we're all over. So I'm really excited to be here and talk to you all.
Hi. I am glad to be back here at Wayne State. It's quite a lovely facility that you have. I must say that back in '84 when I graduated, it didn't look like this, and I didn't get too many free lunches either. So it's nice to see that things have improved in that respect. I too agree that it's really a fantastic time to be a healthcare lawyer because of all the change, and that has been true for about 20, 25 years. I didn't really take a straight line to what I'm doing today. When I got out of law school, it was in the middle of a recession, and things were pretty challenging in terms of finding jobs. I ended up starting with National Bank of Detroit, which you probably don't even recognize that name because it's been eaten up by other banks so many times. But I also spent some time in a small law firm. It was actually a labor law firm, so nothing to do with healthcare, but while I was there, we got a hospital client. And I just fell in love. I loved the dense regulatory text and the process of kind of trying to figure out the answer to a real-world problem in the middle of all this complexity and competing interests. It's also one of those fields where every day when you open the paper, there's something about your industry. If not on the front page, then certainly in Section 8. And coincidentally, when I was in this law firm and had this health law client, I was spending part of my time doing health law, but at that point joined David's firm, which was a boutique law firm doing strictly health law. So that was kind of, I found the thing that I really liked, and then I kind of, veered to, where I would have more opportunity. So, and that kind of gave me a good grounding and basis for the rest of my career. I spent 16 years in-house at Henry Ford Health System, as well as at the Detroit Medical Center. I was actually with HAP, so I've spent some time doing the managed care side, the payer side, but most of that time has been on the provider side, dealing with issues impacting hospitals and physicians and, the folks that do the therapy and so on and so forth. So that's been the bulk of my experience. I also, in the category of don't ignore opportunity when it comes along, when the Detroit Medical Center was purchased by Vanguard in early 2011, I had an opportunity to become the compliance officer for the DMC, working for Vanguard Health System, the national company that owned DMC after the sale. At one level, I was very familiar with, obviously, the regulations and so on and so forth, but this was something very new and different, and it's an opportunity that I took. And for those of you who are interested in health care and health law, you might think about looking into the compliance field, because it does combine a lot of different skill sets, and it's a fun and exciting area to work in. There's a couple of associations that I'm sure we'll mention at some point here that you should be aware of. One of, I'll mention it now, one of them is the American Health Lawyers Association, and the other is the Healthcare Compliance Association. So these are areas where these are associations where you can go and look for internships and those kinds of things and get an idea of the kinds of opportunities that are out there, particularly on the compliance side for people with medical backgrounds, accounting backgrounds, and something law plus is very valuable these days. So I recommend that you take a look at that.
And now me?
And now you.
I only have one degree too. But to tell you, one graduate degree, to tell you the level of excitement in healthcare law, last night I was working on redrafting an opinion letter on a pretty complicated Stark law issue. And I can only do these things at night because the phone's not ringing and there aren't meetings, there aren't people coming in and out of my office asking questions. They take a lot of concentration. But I do have a small television in my office hooked up to cable TV, and you can always find Law and Order on cable TV. So I took great comfort last night while I was sitting by myself doing Stark law analysis that at least I could watch Jack Witz's name on the lawyer, on the prosecutor on Law and Order, doing those exciting courtroom things that really aren't all that realistic, but they're fun to watch. So you probably all have that view of practicing law. So get a TV when you have an office for law. I graduated in 1982. I was 5 at the time, and very precocious. And joined a law firm, and I had some healthcare background. I was a accounting and business major for undergraduate, and so for maybe 5 or 6, about 6 years before law school, I was an administrator for dialysis centers, and then a regional controller, and then a regional administrator, all for the same company that had dialysis centers around the country. So I had some experience with healthcare and dealing with doctors, which is not, pardon me, not an easy thing to do all the time. I'm sure these gentlemen would admit that too. But it has its challenges.
It's like herding cats.
Exactly. But I did have some experience with that. When I graduated from law school, I joined a law firm, and with no real intention of being a healthcare lawyer. I wasn't opposed to it, it just was not really something people focused on that much then, so I didn't think much about it. But after about 3 or 4 years, about 3 years there, I started working with a large healthcare client of that firm, with one of the senior partners in the firm. It was his client. And there were about 150 doctors involved with this client, so I kind of got to know many of them, going to meetings and so on. And then they would call me, we got along fine, they would call me for other things that were coming up in their offices. Before I knew it, I was a healthcare lawyer in the mid-1980s. Which was in many ways, from a legal standpoint, very different from what it is today. So more and more and more of my practice got to be that. So after several years, I left that firm. It was a great firm, but I wanted to be somewhere where we just focused on health law, joined a couple of other people, and we had a health law firm, like a boutique health law firm, and had the good fortune to work with Donna for part of that time. And that's kind of evolved over the years to what I have today, which is a small firm. All we do is healthcare law in my firm. But it's a pretty interesting, at least to me, an interesting array of what we do. Most of our clients are physicians, physician groups, a lot of physician groups, other kinds of healthcare entities, whether it's physical therapy companies, home health agencies, skilled nursing facilities, clinical laboratories, a lot of work in the clinical laboratory area. And more recently, following up on the Affordable Care Act, we organized a pretty large physician-controlled ACO, an accountable care organization, that's in the Medicare Shared Savings Program. And it's pretty interesting, and I think to some extent a harbinger of what kinds of concepts we can look for, at least some of them, in the future. So to me, that was pretty interesting. But in addition to this stuff that's kind of, I guess, business law with a layer of healthcare regulation over the top of it. There's a lot of that, Stark law, anti-kickback law, all those things are really, they impact business arrangements. But in addition to that, we do a lot of physician licensing cases, we do a lot of medical staff privilege cases, we do audits, Medicare, Blue Cross, Medicaid audits when the payer typically, most of them we see are Medicare and Blue Cross, go into a physician group or physician office or a pharmacy. We have a lot of pharmacy clients that get audits, and they say, we want the money back. You sent us a bill, we paid you the money, but then they'll audit, they'll look at records, they'll say, we shouldn't have paid you, we want the money back. And those can be pretty interesting cases. Medical license cases, getting back to my law and order fantasies. We had just one example, it's unusual, but it's an example. We had a client, a physician, who was accused of intentionally killing a patient with potassium chloride. And we built kind of a team to represent this person in the licensing case. He was never charged criminally, but this was like a murder case with a civil burden of proof. So it was a pretty interesting case. We won the case. He didn't do it. Well, at least we don't think he did. The state didn't prove its case, and we think we proved that he didn't do it. That's kind of extreme, but you get in licensing, as an example, the whole range of either misconduct, everything from inappropriate relationships to inappropriate contact to medical incompetence or medical negligence, like a malpractice case, but in the context of licensing. We don't do malpractice defense. Just a whole array of pretty interesting situations come up. So we have lots of stories. I could regale you all day with stories of things that people who were otherwise smart people did really stupid things, and you can't figure that out why they would have done it. So anyway, so we get a nice array of those kinds of matters. So I like it.
Okay. Well, this has been a really great start to the panel, and what I wanted to do next was, I was just going to ask a couple of very broad questions to give everyone a chance to say a little bit more about not only their own practical experience, but also advice to all of you who are thinking about moving into this direction. And I think we'll have a couple of questions that I'll ask, and then we'll just open it up for open conversation, because I want to make sure that there's plenty of time to get all of your questions answered. But I guess the one really broad question I wanted to ask is, we have a lot of students here who have some interest in health law. Based on your experiences, what advice would you give our students who are thinking about careers in this area, about what they should be doing now to prepare, and sort of how to get from here to there? I know a couple of you mentioned that you didn't necessarily start out thinking that you were going to be in health law. Others of you had more of an idea that that's where you wanted to be, either because of prior experience or prior professional training. But what would each of you say to our students here to kind of give them advice as to how to get from here to there? And let me start over here. Yeah.
Before we do that,
Okay.
can I ask one question because this ties into it? Why the organic chemistry book?
Oh. I was taking organic chemistry.
Well, that ties in with the advice. If you want to be able to combine a law degree with other technical degrees, because it starts to create edges. Like, for example, 20 years ago, I used to be the medical director of the city of Detroit. Are you guys all Detroiters? Mainly Detroit, Metro Detroiters? How many Metro Detroiters? Okay. The fact that you're not screwed up with lead toxicity was because of me. 20 years ago, I used to be the medical director of the city of Detroit. I was the chief physician in charge of all medical and public health services for over 1 million people. And as far as Detroit City water was concerned, that was under my medical direction. And type of job where I had the direct phone number to the U.S. White House. Now, that's really handy for a forensic expert, because I can truthfully, under oath, say, I used to have the direct phone number to the U.S. White House. Did Dr. Jones have the direct phone number to the U.S. White House? No. I'm right, he's wrong. How did I end up getting that position? Because back in the day, there was a large Detroit law department, still is, and there was a very large Detroit health department. There were 1,200 people in the Detroit health department, but no attorney attached to the health department. So the Coleman Young administration said to me, and I had all the other right technical background. You had to have a master of public health, right, board certifications. There were 500 doctors that applied for that job. But the reason why I got it is that the Coleman Young administration, which was not known for being a very well-run organization, but they did have this much to their credit, said, doctor, if you do the general counsel law work at the health department, we'll make you the medical director. Now, we'll only pay you to be medical director, so you have to do both jobs for the same pay. But I figured this is going to look good on my resume for the rest of my life. So the point being is, getting multiple areas of expertise, you start to fall into, they'll start coming together in unusual ways, perhaps unanticipated ways. And when you're in that circumstance, there's not much competition. If you're an attorney that is also a chemistry major, that becomes a patent attorney, that this and that, you start to fall into nice little niches where there's not much competition. Now, the other point I'll make, this is healthcare law. I've done a fair amount of healthcare law representation, not nearly as much as the other speakers, but the reason why I could do it, and I didn't do medical malpractice defense, is medical malpractice defense always gets directed by the insurance company, and that gets bid down. Whereas if you're doing healthcare law representing physicians, what have you, develop some expertise where some doctor will say, I want to hire you versus somebody else. That's a situation where the individual doctor is paying for your services, and that doesn't get bid down. Now you have to make sure you learn the skill of getting your money. That's the skill to learn. But it doesn't get bid down. So this is something that, even you could end up opening up your own boutique healthcare law firm representing physicians and doctors and nurses with licensure problems. And that's possible. Whereas for you to go off and open up a healthcare law firm and then get a bunch of work from the Detroit Medical Center, probably a little hard. But healthcare law is an area where you can break in as just a single sole practitioner. I did it as a young guy, and you know, at some periods of my life, that was about half my income for a given year. That'll show it.
From my perspective, the background that you get in law is going to be something that is fortunately an opportunity to mold any interest you may have into the approach to healthcare. There is a variety of things to cover, as David mentioned earlier. There is a multitude of experiences that can be had being a health lawyer. You can negotiate contracts if you're interested in contract law. You can negotiate lawsuits, be a defense counsel for a physician that is being taken by the Board of Medicine to forfeit his license. You can argue in front of the Supreme Court in constitutional law why the Affordable Care Act is wrong. There is a large variety of things that can be done, and really it is entirely up to you how you use that information to make it fit what your interests are. All of us have a background that we can rely on. All of us have stories that nobody else in the room knows about you that are helpful and that can mold the direction that you take being a health lawyer. Very much anything can be helpful to you. When I started in law school, I had no real idea that my information in anatomy, I have a master's degree in anatomy, my information in business, I have an MBA, my information as a surgeon was going to in any way help me to do the things that I have done. So adapt, incorporate all the things that you have, and being an individual healthcare lawyer in a small boutique arrangement, or being the counsel, in-house counsel to represent a major medical center or a major healthcare insurer will help you once you put into play all the things that you have learned. So medicine, like law, are extremely broad. You can make them do whatever you want to do with them, and it's entirely up to your imagination to apply it and make it successful. There are no borders, there are no limits. The sky is the only limit. The only limitation is 6 inches. It's what's between your right ear and your left ear.
By the way, it reminds me, I'm in competition with him to try to get as many degrees as possible.
Yeah, that's exactly my thought too about the degrees. I was like, I don't know, I would think a great lunch session would be, let's figure out how many years of education. Just rattled off an MBA slipped in there. I was like,
Around town, they always sit down and say, oh, you're like Dr. Diaz, you got all those degrees.
so, I mean, I take it from a little bit of a different position. When I graduated law school, I did not want to go on any more school. So I was like, I wanted a self-starter with that degree. So my advice with that color in mind in health law. So I'll harken back to a comment I said. You know, I'm thinking of all the acronyms of different healthcare agencies. There was HHS, CMS, CSIO, ASPE, AHIP. You know, all these organizations need interns, and these are all policy. Now, this is a healthcare policy, so a little different than my colleagues at the other end of the table who are actually representing providers or negotiating contracts or litigating cases. I'm taking it from the point of view of what I've been doing for my career, which is focusing on the policy aspects and interpreting regulations, some of the compliance components that was mentioned also. And I am amazed, you know, having never left Detroit until I was close to 30. I went to the University of Michigan at Wayne. And nowadays, you guys, you know, with the internet and everything, I'm sure everything's at the tip of your fingers. But I was amazed at, you know, what I didn't know, which was that all of these organizations out there would be glad to have you for a second-year summer, or even, you know, and you know, you'll be able to work on healthcare issues that are of import to this country, whether implementing Affordable Care Act regulations, Medicaid reform, Medicare. These are all things you can get your foot in the door and see if this is an area that clicks, and then, you eventually, you'll gain that sort of clinical acumen that is sort of needed to really make it in the profession. But that would be my suggestion if I was sitting in your shoes.
And I think I started talking about this when I commented earlier that to me, health law is such a broad field at this point. It touches on so many aspects of life, really, that it's a lawyer plus a nurse is a very valuable thing. A lawyer plus, who's a pharmacist. I think that having that technical background in combination with law is really very valuable today. A lawyer who understands statistics, I don't know if there's one in the room, but that's another thing that right now the federal government is, as you know from everything you see in the media, is very, very focused on the cost of healthcare to under Medicare and then just overall in general, and they're starting to use statistics very effectively to identify healthcare fraud. They had the data for a long time, but they didn't use it for a long time. And so now they're starting to use it effectively. So when you're in healthcare, you start to think, it would be really nice to have someone with that background and skill set who also understands, the legal side of things. So, again, kind of reiterating what some of the other speakers have said, it's nice to have some diversity in your background, to have the health law, the lawyer background, but also plus something else that kind of makes you stand out from the crowd and in an increasingly complex world where you'll be able to find your niche.
I guess I would add to that too, in that for myself, the accounting background that I had before law school has helped me tremendously throughout my career. I understand business situations, I understand business issues in a different way from lawyers who don't have that understanding. You don't have to have an accounting degree to get it. You have to somehow have learned about accounting. I had the degree, and plus I worked in the area as a controller and so on. That has made a big difference to me because I could understand pretty clearly what a client was going through. And I think to follow up on a couple of the comments that were made on the other side of the podium here, to think about what you want to do, whether it's argue before the Supreme Court on the Affordable Care Act, or what do you like is really what's important. If you like to get to, for lack, I guess of a better term, get your fingers dirty a little bit, if you like to be where the rubber hits the road and work with clients, be in their offices sometimes, get to know the people who work in their offices, the kinds of things they do. I have a large oncology practice that's a client. It's very interesting. I have almost daily contact with them. Other clients who work in other areas, clinical laboratory and so on. Getting to know what they do and understanding what they do, understanding the whole process for a clinical laboratory, tests and results, is pretty interesting to some people. It is to me. But if you want the more, I guess, academic kind of practice of litigation and especially appellate litigation, we do some of that, but the parts that I like the best are not that. The parts I like the best are becoming a part of these clients' practices. And to me, that gets back to thinking about what is it that you like? What is it that you want to do? If it's something you like, you'll more than likely be successful at it, ultimately. If it's something you don't really like, but you think, well, I should do this, you won't be that happy with it, probably. So the first thing is think about what you like, what kinds of day-to-day things you enjoy doing, and then go after that, is my thought.
Thank you. I'll add my 2 cents too, which is just that one of the things that I think is really interesting about the health law field right now, and I think it has been true for many years as well, it's constantly changing. And Brad mentioned before how much is going on around the Affordable Care Act. I mean, I sometimes like to refer to the Affordable Care Act as the Full Employment for Health Lawyers Act, because there's so many things that have to be figured out and will be for years and years to come. And because of the changes, also advances in technology and things that are going on with medicine and with public health, I think that if you end up working in this field, you're going to find that you're constantly having opportunities to learn about new things and have new challenges, because the legal landscape and the just technological and other landscapes that intersect here are always going to be changing. I want to make sure we have lots of time for questions, so let's open it up for questions from all of you, and just raise your hand if you want to ask. Yes.
I'm really interested in bioethics. Is there a role for lawyers in bioethics? And how would that look? Would people get paid?
So who wants to start on that one?
Well, the problem with the bioethics is, it's a good question, are you gonna get paid? Because it's the type of thing that might be like in a committee in a hospital where you may have a hospital ombudsman may be involved in that process. You might write about the issues. But the way to get paid is if you're, like some of the panelists here that have a healthcare law practice, and you're representing a physician that has been accused of some ethical breach, and maybe having that more in-depth understanding of bioethics makes you a more effective healthcare lawyer. A law degree is a one-handy degree. The nice thing about a law degree is if somebody's going to see a lawyer, they expect to pay them money. Whereas consultants, you're a bioethicist. Do I pay you, or are you paying me to talk? But a lawyer, it's conventional that people need the time of a lawyer and they pay money for it. So if you can combine that background with the legal background, it's good. I think it'll just make you a better healthcare lawyer.
And I would add to that bioethics is a fairly small part of practice, both in an in-house setting and also in a law firm setting. There are some issues that come up, but I don't know that it would be comprise a full-time position. It's mainly, as was suggested, being on a committee at a hospital and participating in these issues when they arise.
Yeah, and I'll add, well, I can't let the opportunity go without making a plug for my bioethics in the law course, which is being offered. So for those of you that are really interested in bioethics, I encourage you to talk to me about that. But the only other thing I'll add is that I think that there are, I don't know about getting paid, but there are lots of opportunities to be involved with bioethical issues, and depending on which issues you're involved in, that can intersect with your practice. If you're talking about sort of doctor-patient relationship type issues, human subjects research type issues, and things like that, there might be other areas where you could approach some of the legal and ethical issues from other types of positions, maybe not as a practicing attorney, but if you're working in an institution in some capacity, maybe in a general counsel's office or otherwise, where you're advising on policies that have ethical implications, or maybe you're advising as an expert. You're advising government officials who are making decisions about regulations or other issues. That's where that can come in, and you can apply some of those ideas and influence the policy in that way.
I can chime in. I know where you can make $500 an hour is if you're testifying as a forensic expert in such issues. You don't have to be a medical doctor to be a forensic expert. So that might be the other end of the coin, where you can sit down and say, okay, fine, I'm an expert in this, and somebody has a jam, and they're going to pay you $500 or $1,000 an hour to testify. That is another niche that you can look at.
Okay.
I don't want to create a lot of competition for myself.
Okay, other questions?
Question. Maybe going. I found myself in conversations, I think, where I've started conflating compliance, I think, with maybe something else I was trying to talk about. Can you just expand upon the distinction between compliance and, I guess, other practices?
Well,
the distinction. Got very I don't want to say got adversarial, but oh no, we're not doing compliance.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and-
You know, it's funny that since I have gone back and forth between compliance and legal twice, I know that people who have many more years of experience than anyone in this room in these issues gets that mixed up all the
Mhm.
time. You know, when I was in compliance, they called me to do a contract. When I was in legal, so it is a very common area of confusion, but it's kind of like this, you know, there's two different circles, but then there's the circle in the middle where there's some crossover. But the roles are considered very distinct. The government wants you to have a separate, as a healthcare institution, to have a separate distinct function of compliance that is not part of the legal function. The legal function is meant to protect the organization. And so if the legal function is dealing with the problem, they're going to protect it by attorney-client privilege. They're going to look for ways, you know, why this isn't a problem, whereas the compliance function is more of an education, monitor, change our policies, you know, education, you know, so you're kind of doing that circle, but there tends to be a focus more in compliance on finding, admitting, and addressing our problems and issues. Whereas the legal focus, because it's focused on protecting the organization, is more about, ooh, we found a problem. Let's pretend like it's not a problem. So it's just a natural thing that comes out of protecting the organization. So there are different focuses. You don't have to be a lawyer to be in compliance. Many people who are in compliance are lawyers. But again, I'd recommend Healthcare Compliance Association, a great website to check out.
Okay. Other questions?
Can I make a comment real quickly?
Yeah,
And that
absolutely.
is, there was a question earlier, and you're talking about the Healthcare Compliance Association, reminded me, I wanted to say this.
Yes.
Another organization is the Healthcare Law Section of the State Bar of Michigan, that's very active in Michigan. You can be a student member as well. It's good for networking, it's good for substantive things, and I have found it a very valuable organization to belong to. So in addition to the others that were mentioned earlier, the State Bar Healthcare Law Section is, I think, a pretty good thing to be involved with.
Yeah, and let me follow up on that. I mean, I want to ask the panelists whether they have other suggestions about ways that students can both gain experience in health law if they're interested, and also to successfully meet people who are in the field and have opportunities to learn more about what they might be doing if they take a career path that leads them in this direction. Other suggestions about that? You know, in addition to being involved with the State Bar Health Law Section.
Yeah, those kinds of
Yeah,
things are
yeah.
good at taking advantage of networking opportunities, looking for clerkships. I have a small firm, but we do have a law clerk from Wayne, a third-year law student at Wayne, who I don't think is here. So I have to speak to her about that. But she's already heard all this. She's sick of hearing it. Yeah.
I think the American Health Lawyers that was mentioned,
American
I'm
Health
fairly
Lawyers is
active.
another
There's all kinds of task force. I'm on a behavioral health task force. That's a great organization to get involved in. Maybe the American Bar Association has a health law section as well. I mean, I think that those are all places to begin in terms of just getting your feet wet and networking.
You know, there's another thing that you may want to consider too is, you know, Wayne, the beautiful thing about Wayne is it's unbelievably cheap as far as education is concerned. I mean, maybe not so much the law school, maybe not so much the medical school, but a lot of the other degree programs are relatively inexpensive. And, for example, they have my recollection is they have a Master of Public Health here. Now, that might, if you go going and getting a public health degree, gets you a little bit integrated into the medical center, the medical community here, and it gives you another credential that you can show your diversity of expertise. So if I were in your shoes, I'd start looking at some other degree programs that you may want to consider doing either now as a student. You know, some of these programs are like, they're night programs, you can do it slowly. Look at Dr. Diaz, he did this, he went to law school, he's full-time neurosurgeon, okay, you guys can do it. And
Meanwhile, I was in the same class, I was like watching TV in my free time.
We have sort of a warped view of things, but you may want to consider doing that. And there's nothing like being in an academic program with other people with related interests and discipline. It can kind of get you more integrated than just going to a meeting. You're just another body at the meeting. But if you're in the classes, you're meeting professors and the like, that may be something you want to think about doing. And again, Wayne State, very inexpensive. Harvard, expensive. Oxford, really expensive. Wayne State, inexpensive.
One of the benefits of the many associations that are out there for public health is that you can access them as a student. You can get involved early on. And gaining additional information or an additional level of competency is really all dependent on time management. To all of you right now, it may be overwhelming that I have all this studying to do, I have all these books to read, I have all these papers to write. What am I going to do with myself? Where is my time going? It really, the day has 24 hours for each one of us. And the day will give you what you ask of it. It all depends on how you structure your time. You can be a clerk, you can be shadowing somebody, you can be an intern. All of these give you access to courtrooms, to hospitals, to law firms, to industry. It is entirely up to you to figure out how you get there. There are some of us that can help you get in many places by just calling us and saying, hey, I'm interested in this. If we don't know where to get you, we can probably point you in the right direction to go someplace. But a lot of it depends on you and depends on the way you structure your time. The way I studied was on the weekends because I had a full week. I couldn't do anything during the week, so my weekends were my study time, Saturday and Sunday. That's how I did it, and I went to school during the week in the evening, and I got done in 3.5 years. So it is just a matter of how you divide your time, how you plan to do what you do, and what your commitment, not to the school, not to your family, not to your spouse, but to yourself. Yes. Where do you want to be in 5 years? If you do not have a plan, you're planning to fail.
There's another thing that I was just thinking about. I don't know how much they teach you about LinkedIn, but I think LinkedIn has a lot of health law groups and a lot of health organizations, and they post articles and they have like listservs. That might be an idea that's easy to see what's out there in terms of sort of health. You type it into the search and there's different hospital groups, different, I know I'm on a few listservs there that might be networking opportunities, virtual at least.
Yeah, and I have another suggestion. I think in an increasingly complex world, you're starting to see a lot of certification for this and certification for that, and that's a credential that you can get relatively easily and comparatively, cheaply to comparing it to formal education. And I've been a healthcare attorney for years, and worked in a lot of different jobs. But I went and got my certificate in healthcare compliance this past summer. And I can't tell you how many people say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so," they're really impressed with that. And I think, it may seem like a small thing, but it's one of those things that can distinguish you from others.
Yeah, that's true. In healthcare, there's a lot of project management.
Yes.
There's certifications with that. There's certifications that deal with coding. I mean, there's all kinds of things that would set you apart. That's a true passion. That's a good one.
Okay. I think we're just about out of time. I know another class needs to come in here at 1:25 to start. But I just wanted to thank all of our panelists again and to give them a round of applause for sharing everything. And I think everyone, I don't think anyone's dashing off right away. So I would encourage you to come up for a few minutes until we have to vacate the room, if you have individual questions, and then even after we have to vacate the room, we'll probably all hang out in the hall for a little while. Thank you all for being here, and thanks to all of our panelists for sharing their wisdom with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.